Welcome to this week's Wabe. My name is Abraham Wright, or Abe, sitting next to Wade. And this podcast is designed to answer the many questions we all have. I know that we are in difficult times right now. So someone sent in a very, I would say, good timing question. And this is what they said. The coronavirus is giving me a fear of death. Can you help me? So the coronavirus is giving them a fear of death. Can you help me? Before we answer that, I do want to remind you to send in your questions to wabequestions@gmail.com. We'll answer the question here in a few moments. Okay, Wade. They said the coronavirus, and I can actually relate to this. We were talking this week. You were talking to me about it. It's giving people, some, not everybody, a fear of death. And they're just saying, can we offer some help? What are your thoughts?
Sure. How direct do we want to be?
I think it's very blunt.
Very blunt?
Yes.
You're going to die.
Not of coronavirus. Well, that's not a laughing matter, but wow.
No.
That is so good to hear. Wait. That is true. So
we're
afraid of dying of the coronavirus, but we're going to die.
It is appointed to man once to die, and then the judgment.
That's Hebrews 9:27,
Yes.
I believe. Yeah.
So I think what's happened, nothing's changed in this world, Abraham. Nothing. Except soft people who've gotten comfortable with status quo have now awakened to the truth that has never changed. You're going to die. Now, what encouragement is that?
Well, I think about this saying you're going to die. You're causing us to think about it. Solomon, the wisest man outside of Jesus to ever live, wrote in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 4, a wise person thinks a lot about death, while a fool thinks only of having a good time. So there seems to be wisdom when we think about, contemplate our own
absolutely.
death.
Absolutely. Yeah. And here's the thing, Abraham. Most people, when they say, man, I'm scared of dying, really what they're saying is, I haven't gotten married yet. I don't have kids yet. I haven't enjoyed a full life. I haven't enjoyed life the way I want to, and I'm afraid that my life is going to be over sooner rather than later. So I'll offer some encouragement along those lines. You ready?
Yeah.
This coronavirus, this COVID-19, I mean, it's serious. Death rate between 2 and 3%. Okay? But here's the thing. This is not new to our world. I can go back to 450 BC when the Greeks lost their lives through an epidemic. I can go back to the 1st century AD when a global pandemic occurred. We can go to 1350 AD when the Black Plague swept the world and 1/4 of the world's population died. You can go to 1850.
One out of every four died in 1350.
1 out of every 4. Wow. In the world. And now we're sitting here, we have 350 million population in the United States. We might reach 200,000 deaths over the coronavirus.
Wow.
And everybody's panicked. I think we're soft.
And we know those deaths, they're not just trivial. It's important because people could be losing a grandparent, a father.
Of course
but what
not.
you're just waking us up to the reality is this is nothing new in
Nothing
world
new.
history, and it's appointed for us to die. So instead of avoiding this big elephant in the room, just face it. I mean, we're all going to die at some point.
Yeah, well,
It's just not easy for some to think about.
no, of course not. The verse you quoted, I think is wisdom. If you think about your death, you're ready to live. In fact, we'll put it this way. You're never really ready to live until you're prepared to die.
Wow.
So if you're not thinking about death, you're not really living.
Wow.
Here's a verse that I think is very appropriate. It's from the book of Revelation. Jesus Christ is speaking, and he says, I hold the keys of life and death. Have you ever been late because you've lost your keys?
Yeah.
I have. I've been late, lost the keys to the car, lost the keys to the house, lost the keys to the office. Okay, what do keys do? They open things up. Okay. I think the reason people have panicked today is because we have fallen into the wrong belief that science holds the keys of life and death. We have come to this place where we think it's our obligation to prevent people from dying. And I think what the Lord is doing, honestly, in allowing the global pandemic is waking us up to the fact that Jesus Christ alone holds the keys of life and death, or death and the grave, I think is the actual translation. He's the only one who can unlock it.
So he knows the number of our days.
Absolutely.
So it's, wow. So for me, Wayne, I talked to you a little bit about it this week. I had a little bit of fear. Would you say that you have any fear of dying?
No.
I wish I could hook you up to a polygraph test.
Yeah. No, I mean,
But no fear.
No, I can lie to you right now and tell you no, and nobody would know. I'm just telling you right now, I have none.
And so where you're at is what I'm striving towards. Philippians 3, Paul talked about something else, but about pursuing Christ, knowing him. But he says in Philippians 3, 12 through 14, not that I've achieved it or that I've already reached perfection, but I press on. And that, I believe he said twice in verses 12 through 14 of chapter 3, he presses on to reach it. So I think for some people, if you do fear dying, that doesn't mean that you're not a Christian, that God doesn't love you, that you can't be still used by him. God accepts us in our weaknesses, but we can still continue as believers to press towards this maturity of hopefully reaching the point to where we say, hey, you know what? I'm ready to die. I'm not afraid. I just go back and forth because part of me wants to be here for my wife and my children, but I know that obviously God is a great, he is the provider. I'm not the provider. He uses me to help provide for my family. But just in practicality, I mean, I would like to see my children grow up.
Oh, of course.
So, but I need to reach the point to where I believe that eternity, what he has for me on the other side, is far outweighs and is better than anything I can experience on this side. And I have to see that through faith. So everything in my life now, I can experience it, I can eat, I can see my family, but eternity, heaven, is something we have to read about, trust, believe, but it's the unseen. And I think it's hard for people to fully trust in the unseen.
Yeah, I agree, Abe. The Bible says, eye has not seen,
Yep.
ear has not heard, neither has it entered into the mind of anyone what God has prepared for those who love him. And what that means is there's no way we can comprehend what eternity will be like. I remember sitting with a boy who was 16, and he was dying of terminal cancer. He would later die within 6 months of having lunch. Okay? And I asked him what he was concerned about regarding his impending death. And I'll never forget this because it's still in my mind. He reaches for the mustard, where I bought him a hamburger, and he's putting mustard on his hamburger, and he thinks, okay, what is it that really bothers me about the knowledge I'm going to die at the age of 16? Puts his mustard on, and he thinks about it, and then he sets the mustard down, and he says, I'm going to miss out. I'm going to miss out on graduation. I'm going to miss out on marriage. I'm going to miss out on a future. Okay, and you know what? I appreciate his transparency, because if I were in his shoes, I'd probably be saying the same thing. So
And you said he did later die.
within 6 months. Okay, but he left that restaurant greatly encouraged, because this is what I did, Abe. I said, and I called him by name. His name was Craig. Some of you watching this may know who I'm talking about. Loved him. I said, Craig, let me ask you a question. What's the greatest day you've ever experienced in your life? By far, the greatest. Hands down. No questions. Well, think back to that day. He thought for a moment. I said, do you have it in your mind? He said, I do. I said, tell me about it. And so he told me. I won't go into the details. But he told me.
Yeah.
I said, Craig, how would you respond if I said this? The day you die, the very next day, and the next, and the next, and the next, for the next 1,000,000 years, will be infinitely better than the day you just described to me.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, that's what he said. He said, wow. Okay, here's the problem though, Abe. I can say that, and people can say, wow, wow. But I think the deep-rooted fear about dying is that the person who's in charge and holds the keys, people have doubt that he really likes them. And it's a little bit like when I was growing up, my dad was the son of an alcoholic. He may be watching this. He's a great guy. He was best man at my wedding. But boy, he had to overcome so much. My dad was the son of an alcoholic. Anger ruled his home. Anger ruled his life. And when I was growing up, he still hadn't yet broken free of that. And so I would clean the garage as best as I could because I'd been given the assignment. And when I was done, I thought I'd done everything right. My dad would come out and grab the broom out and, you haven't cleaned this garage. And I experienced the wrath of an earthly father.
Tension.
Yes. Okay, most people think that's the way God is. Hey, what'd you think you were doing all those years? What?
That's funny saying. I was reading in Numbers this morning, I think chapter 31. A lot of people died, and so there are some Old Testament, God is that way. But I understand what we see, what Christ did, dying in our place.
Absolutely.
Absorbing God's wrath.
Absolutely.
In our place, and now, yes.
Yeah, so all the failures that you read about in the Old Testament because of sin, Christ fulfilled the law.
Wow.
And, I know we're getting off track, but I got an email this morning. There was an article in our newspaper that said, great guy, it's a great article. It was a guy that instructs in yoga. And the article was about how he came to believe in the Christian God through yoga. And I had an email from a person in our church who said, what do you think about that? And I responded, I said, well, I read it. And I thought, how does yoga teach you that Christ died for your sins? And she said, those were my thoughts exactly. You see, here's the thing, Abe. People think of the Christian God, and he's love, he's grace, he's all of that, which he is.
Yeah.
But then when they come to their own sense of failure, and everyone is a failure.
At some point, yeah.
At some point, every one of us is. Okay, how does God deal with that? And you and I both believe that through his love for us, he dealt with our failures at the cross. Yoga doesn't teach you that. The Word of God does. And when you come to a settled sense that all of your failures have been dealt with at the cross, then you're prepared to die and know that this God who loves you, he likes you, he gave you his Son, how will he not freely give you all things?
That's funny when you say he likes you. You think, okay, he's obligated to love, but like might be even more intimate, more powerful. So I love my enemies. I love,
but you don't like them.
I like you.
I like you.
Wow.
That's way my dad says it is, when you think of the love of God, think about him having a refrigerator in heaven and your picture's on it.
Wow.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know what, Wade, I was thinking, because you said you're not afraid to die. If I plan like a little game and we're leaving out of here and we had it on video, someone said, "Give me your money." And they had a gun. You said, "Ah!" But I do. I trust what you said about not being afraid to die. I do. And I do want to remind people, if you're not there yet, Psalms 103 verse 14 says, God knows that we are but dust. It says also in Psalms 103, he knows how weak we are. That's the context. So as Paul said in Philippians 3, just keep pressing towards the goal. It's like working out. If you are still full of fear of dying, that's not from God. Keep studying his word, keep praying, get around other believers, and trust that in time, he can give you the power to overcome this sense of fear.
Absolutely.
And I have to continue to lay it before God, and he helps me as I go. And I have to trust that if I ever reached a point to where I knew I was going to die, I knew I was leaving my family, I don't need to think about what I would do in that situation, because Paul says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So I have to make sure I'm also relying on a power outside of me that can dwell up and live inside of me through the Spirit that can help me over time continue to overcome my fear.
And you know, Abe, if the person who sent this question in about the fear of dying, I think you and I wish we could talk to people who send questions in, because the truth of the matter is, what they may be afraid of is not so much meeting God or afraid of heaven. They may have come to a settled sense that they're right with God. What they may be afraid of is the process of dying, meaning the pain involved in that.
How are you going to die?
Yeah. Are your lungs going to be sealed up like concrete and you can't breathe, which is what COVID-19 is doing? You know, it feels like you're drowning and you can't breathe. And so I understand the fear of pain. I'll tell you what's helped me on that. You know, I've thrown my shoulder out 7 times. And, you know,
last time, that was serious
that was
too.
a couple of weeks ago, man. Yeah, I was turning around with my grandson, taking him to see, what was that? The Call of the Wild, the new movie.
Yeah, with the dog.
Yeah, it was a great movie, Harrison Ford. And so I just turned around from the driver's seat to buckle him in and threw my right shoulder out. And oh, for heaven's sake, this is the 7th time, and the pain is enormous. It pressed against my ulnar nerve, my arm paralyzed, the pain shot through my body, and so on. But I was used to it now, and so I didn't.
I mean,
yell
that can be
out.
serious. If you don't get to a hospital in time, let's say,
Paralyzes my arm. Yeah,
like
so-
you could lose it.
Well, I lose feeling, and it takes a long time for rehabilitation. But my point is this: I don't ever want to throw my arm out. Okay, but I've crossed that threshold of fearing the pain, and I think anybody that's experienced physical pain, intense physical pain, if you've ever been shot, concussions on the football field, separation of a shoulder, okay, that's the pain of dying. I mean, you're not going to have much more pain than that. You just lose consciousness. Does that make sense?
I don't know if this is the right illustration. A few times, my last fight was in 6th grade, but I remember being terrified of fighting.
Yeah.
And once you get in a fight,
You don't even think
don't
about
you
it.
get that adrenaline
Yeah, of
afterwards?
course.
Like, I don't want to
That's
go hit
exactly right.
somebody. I mean, you feel like I made it. So it was, but versus the fear of fighting, like, man, am I going to die? Is
Yeah.
they gonna, and then you kind of get a little
Yeah,
fight
no,
and you
you're
feel,
right. No, you're right, Abe.
which we don't need to be fighting, of
Yeah,
course.
no,
That's-
but I think, Abe, and I mean, you've been a pastor for a long time. I've been a pastor for almost 4 decades.
Wow.
And I've been around, I don't want to exaggerate. I'm going to try to give as accurate of a number as possible. I've been around at least 200 to 300 deaths at the moment of dying.
Wow.
Several hundred more after that, after people have already died, but at least 200 to 300 in the room
as they're taking their last breath.
as they're taking their last breath. Wow. And all I can say to you is
Wow.
this: there is a grace that God gives to his kids in the moment of dying. It is the sweetest, most precious moment of your life. Precious in the eyes of the Lord is the death of one of his saints. And what's interesting, Abe, is that word precious in the Hebrew language literally means rare. There's a diamond in England, and underneath it is this inscription. It's called the Ben Jonson diamond. Oh, rare Ben Jonson diamond. Oh, precious Ben Jonson diamond. So my question to you is this. Is it rare, the Ben Jonson diamond, because it's rare in number? Maybe so. Okay, but is it a rare thing for people to die because it's rare in number? No, everyone dies. Okay, so
The value?
correct. So very good. So why is the death of one of God's saints rare? It's not rare that it doesn't happen very often, like a diamond.
Yeah.
It's rare because of the value of it or the nature of it.
Wow.
It's rare because, Abe, as you know, a saint dying, a sinner dying
Yeah.
in the grace of God, it is a different kind of death than a sinner who dies apart from the grace of God. It's a beautiful thing. So all I could just say, if that person who sent that question in knows Christ, Abe, it is, don't worry about it. It is,
God will give you the grace.
God will give you the grace, and it is a precious moment in your life.
And I will say this in closing. If you don't know Christ, I think you should be afraid of dying. I really do. The thought of standing before God and being judged on whether or not you're going to go to heaven based on your goodness, that should terrify us. But the good news is, I hope you picked it up. We believe that Jesus came and died on the cross for our sins. He took the punishment we deserve. So when we trust in Him, it doesn't always alleviate our fears. It just doesn't. At least for me, it hasn't. But it gives me hope that my salvation is not dependent on me. It's dependent on what Jesus did for me. And I trust in Him. And as I'm going through my life, He continues to help me and just be with me throughout my life. And at the moment of my death, I trust that He can give me a grace, a power. As Paul even said, 2 Corinthians 12, there was a thorn, a pain, it seemed, in His side. And Jesus told him, my power works best in weakness. So as Paul was very weak, God's power somehow worked at its best. So if you don't know Christ, let this be a moment where you trust in Jesus, run to the cross. Please send in comments, your questions. Wade and I would love to continue to dialogue. Call the church office, comment below. We can follow up as needed. But let this be an opportunity to where it points everyone, believers and non-believers, to eternity, to Jesus,
Amen.
and how He's our only hope.
Hey, one more thing, because what you said brought it to my attention, and I'll close with this, and I appreciate the discussion, Abe. It's not just heaven that Jesus gives you when you trust Him. That is true. But I want you to think about this. It's heaven on earth. If all you're thinking about is the next world, which is incredible for those who know Christ, you haven't yet fully comprehended what Jesus does in this world. The kingdom is not only not yet, meaning it's coming, the kingdom is now. It's not just yonder, meaning over there. It's right here. And I would just leave you with this encouragement. When you come to a place of being settled in your sense of God's acceptance of you through the work of Jesus Christ, it doesn't just take away fear of the afterlife. It gives you a peace in this life. So you don't have to go through frantic. You don't have to go through the day frantic that you might get COVID-19 because He who gave you His Son holds the keys of life and death.
Wow, Wade, this was encouraging for me. I was sitting there just trying to receive it because some people think of, I don't know, pastors or whatever, we're kind of exempt to worries. And I have sadly worried a little bit more about my death with my young family, but I have to continue to renew my mind, confess my sins, and acknowledge, Jesus, you're my only hope. And so thank you, Wade, for reminding us it's not just heaven, but it's actually right now.
Right now.
So continue to send in your questions to wabequestions@gmail.com. We would love to continue to dialogue. Whatever's on your mind, send it in. Let us continue to have discussion with you. Thanks so much for tuning in. Share this podcast so it can encourage those in your circle of influence. Talk to you soon.